You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available on podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
They are 1.8 billion globally. They would make 75% of workforce by 2025. They will outspace earnings of baby boomers in less than 10 years. Smartphones and tablets are the argument settlers and fact checkers for every conversation. Get more insight on African millennials on Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
That's cool on the beat.
I mean, I'm actually enjoying my week though. On Wednesday, the conversations on architecture really still got to me, and I'm really enjoying every part of it. I mean, thoughts of it has been going back and forth, and then I've been, after we aired the episode, I, had conversation with a couple of people who actually shared the same sentiments as, Walimi Ololafe, shared the other day. And well, I hope that people, get things done well. And, on this episode, right, I'm sorry. Welcome to the African Millennial Radio Show on Africa Business Radio. It's Tommy Wale, and yes, I have an interesting guest. As I was saying earlier, we had a conversation on architecture because I was really just concerned about how people live, the welfare of people, how people do their lives. And of course, it's one thing for you to go back home and then have a beautiful place to sleep. It's another thing for you to now go into work in the morning and then have a good environment to work from. And that is why, we're going to be talking about employment law, actually, not entertainment law. I don't know. I think I should have someone on entertainment law come, at some point. My producer is really acknowledging that with me. So, but then we're going to be talking about, employment, right? Especially from the point of the employees this time around. We've had conversations back and forth about the employer, run the business, doing things right, working with people. We've had, HR consultants come in to talk about what should be done. But I realized that we've actually not talked about the people who would actually employ to do the work. And I have, a very, very seasoned person. Let me tell you a bit about him right before I continue. He's a Senior Counsel and Finance corporate and commercial team lead at a leading Nigerian law firm. Over the past 13 years, he has gathered multidimensional experience across key sectors of the Nigerian economy and has advised several local, international, and cross-border clients on compliance aspects of Nigerian industrial relations and employment law. I'm sure you can imagine, hey, who has told me brought on the show today? Okay. Another thing about him is he has been described as a highly effective attorney who is able to work closely with relevant stakeholders, including board members of clients, C-level executives, regulatory agencies, and government officials. His name is Mayowa Arokodare. Should I say Mr. Mayowa Arokodare Esquire? Just Mayowa Arokodare. Now, he's an associate of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. He's also a Securities and Exchange Commission-accredited capital market consultant, authorized to discharge the functions of a compliance officer. Because see, the way I say I have interesting people on my show, I'm not kidding, yo. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mayowa Arokodare, how you doing?
Very well, thank you.
How's work been this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's been intense as usual, but yeah, I mean,
absolutely productive.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
that's the pressure.
And then focus on the good things.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime someone asks me, they tell me as well, I'm like, I'm just focusing on the good things, man, because I know that they are the good, bad, and ugly, but then the good things are very, very important. How has work been?
Oh, well, I mean, on the whole, work has been great. As you're aware, we live in unprecedented times, and it's been about law firms trying to reposition and take advantage of the opportunities that have been afforded us by the incidence of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Now the pandemic has thrown up quite a number of complex issues, previous issues that were previously, unimagined, issues relating to force majeure, frustration of contracts, unavailability of traditional dispute resolution and what have you. So a lot of issues have come up. So it's been about trying to reposition yourself to take advantage of those opportunities that have come up. Also, because of the stay at home and the lockdown order that has been put in place by the federal government and some of the state governments across the federation, law firms, including ours, are now trying to reposition by focusing on providing our services digitally now, to the extent that most of us now work from home and are implementing flexible time and what have you. So yeah, it's been an interesting time. 1 year ago, nobody imagined that we will be where we were today, but we're thriving. We're not just surviving, we're thriving.
I mean, that's really, really awesome. Yeah. Now, it's interesting. You've been a lawyer for over
13 years.
Yeah, over a decade. Yeah. Now, how has law been for you in this environment of ours? I'm sorry, everybody knows what's happening in the news. And I saw a tweet one day and someone, can you imagine, I'm studying law in this lawless environment, right? So what has law been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, law has been great. Incidentally, I wasn't meant to study law. I was meant to be a doctor like my dad, but yeah, I found myself studying law. I mean, at the end of the day, but law has been great. Specifically, when you speak about employment law, the Nigerian employment law at the moment is, over the past couple of years has been dynamic, because it's been constantly evolving and, the idea is to frequently update it to meet the frequent changes that manifest in employment relationships. Now, however, the transition has been, for want of a better way to put it, has been slow-paced in certain industry, partly due to the fact that the Labour Act, which is the principal legislation governing employment and industrial relations, was enacted as far back as 1971. That's 50 years without any amendment, of the principal legislation in Nigeria to bring our law in tune with, current realities. But if I may add, I've said that, the law has been around for 50 years, but there's a bill that is pending before the National Assembly now, which is seeking to amend the Labour Act specifically on two fronts to prohibit and criminalize the casualization of workers after 6 months of engagement, and also to prohibit the outsourcing of employment in core areas. Let me round up by saying that notwithstanding the fact that our principal legislation is outdated, so to speak, the National Industrial Code of Nigeria is now empowered by virtue of the third alteration to the Constitution Act to apply international best practices in labor on the one hand, as well as treaties, conventions, and protocols that have been ratified by Nigeria on the other hand. Why? The idea is to bring our laws, our standards, our labor law standards in tandem with, global labor trends, So law has been exciting. It's all about, just trying to ascertain what the current position of the law is. The fallout, if I may summarize, the fallout of all of this is that because the law is quick moving, especially in this space, it is important for employers and employees alike to always seek the benefit of top quality legal counsel to be able to ascertain the position of the law on any particular point, because this may be the position of the law today. In a couple of weeks' time, there's a new decision that has, the law has moved forward.
Wow. So I want to ask, I'm happy about some of the progresses you highlighted, and then at least trying to make things better than it was 50 years ago.
Oh yes.
Right. Now you're big on employment law. Why is entertainment law coming into my mouth? Employment law. Yeah. Right. Was there an experience that led to you taking up this interest?
Well, I mean,
or was it just something that you just loved, or something you saw actually?
Well, so I think that by my very nature, I hate for vulnerable parties to be taken advantage of. Let me put this in context. The common law wrongly presumes the equality of parties to employment contracts. The common law presumes that, look, you signed this agreement, you are bound by what you've signed. I mean, you guys, the employer and the employee, are on equal footing. But the truth of the matter is that the common law does not countenance the exercise of superior bargaining power on the part of the employer, and does not take into account that there could be vitiating elements of contracts such as duress, undue influence, and what have you. Now, more often than not, you will find that employment contracts are skewed in favor of the employer, because the truth of the matter is, because of the economic inequality, the employees are basically at the mercy of the employer, and so it's a take it or leave it situation. So basically, from that standpoint, the Nigerian labor law seeks to address the inequality of power that is inherent in employment relationships and prevent the abuse of power by the employer. Let me also add that labor law seeks to specifically remedy wrongs that arise out of employment relationships. I'm sure you have friends, and and then what goes around, you have incidents of exploitation, instances of illegal deduction from salary, issues relating to delayed payments of wages, issues of deprivation of overtime pay, annual holiday, employers depriving married women from going on maternity leave more than once in 2 years. So to answer your question, basically, I do not like for vulnerable parties to be taken advantage. And when you talk about vulnerable parties in the workplace, you're talking about women, you're talking about young persons who are underage, you're talking about the employee. Generally, all employees are vulnerable relative to the employer. So this is what has informed, I generally do finance, corporate and commercial law, but I have I just have a passion for that, for labor and employment law.
It's really, really good. I mean, I don't know if there are people who are really, really particular about labor law, right? But then if I think that was one reason why I followed you on Twitter, actually, because this is someone who is touching some points that needs to be touched on. Now, we all know that sustaining business can be challenging, in our climate, and employers many times go to extreme lengths, in draining out human resource, because the bottom line has to be met. You have to make sure that everybody works hard so they can get the salary paid on the 25th, and things like that. Do you mind sharing some things an employee should look out for, with this knowledge of how things can be? What things do you think an employee should look out for before joining an organization?
Okay, so that's a great question. But before I get into that, I'm just going to piggyback on what you said a couple of minutes ago. The truth of the matter is, everybody should be interested in labor and employment law, because almost every Nigerian, 9 out of every 10 Nigerians is either an employer of labor or an employee. So everybody's got to be interested in what the rights and the obligations of the respective parties are. The point is, if you trying to, and again I digress just before I go into the point, maximizing human capital, right, is all about getting the best out of your people. The only way you can get the best out of your people is if you make your workplace a great place to work. Your office is a great place to work. How do you make it a great place to work? You make it a great place to work where employees feel secure, when they feel safe, when they feel that their rights are respected, where they feel that, they are treated with human dignity and what have you. So now to your point about what I think employees should be on the lookout for. Let me say that as a preliminary point, employees should be wary of certain treatment prior to even the commencement of the employment relationship that suggests discrimination against certain classes of persons. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Certain classes of persons on the basis of gender, ethnicity, and other bases. So matters such as job advertisements, right, that state age, it's commonplace to see advertisements that say don't bother applying if you are older than 27. So job advertorials that state, age, gender, and other criteria may be taken to be discriminatory. The truth of the matter is that they may be symptomatic of, deeper turmoil. So what does that mean? Right. So the point, okay, so let me back up a bit, right? the point is, what are we looking out for to be sure that you are not? It's a look before you leap situation, right?
Yep.
So before you get into the employment relationship, before you put pen to paper, you must have come across advertorials.
Absolutely.
There's this vacancy, there's this opportunity there. So at that point, prospective employees need to be on the lookout for certain things that will hint at the possibility of discrimination. Now, if you see an advertorial that is already telling you, we are looking for preferably a male, preferably a female, they are telling you that this job, this age description, this age bracket rather, those things may be argued to be discriminatory in nature, because there should be a level playing field. Now, if I attend Obafemi Awolowo University and I spend 7 years in there for a 4-year course, owing to no fault of mine, no carryovers and what have you, just simply because of ASU strikes, pandemics and what have you, and then I graduate way later than 27 years, why should I be punished? Why should I be excluded from applying for an employment opportunity
that you're actually competent,
that I am actually competent for? So from even before you get into the employment relationship, I'm just saying, be on the lookout for certain things, because those things could be symptomatic of deeper issues, right? So that's the point I'm making there. Right. Now when the employment relationship commences, again, even before it commences, it may be prudent for employees to request for copies of the employer's work policies. I tell you why I say this, right? It is very important, more often than not, because we all know what the economic, we all know what the situation in the country is. So many a times you find the employee who is literally grateful to be afforded that opportunity. But the truth of the matter is, you don't put pen to paper until you have read the terms and conditions. What are the terms and conditions? Many employees just show up, they give them the letter of employment, they sign, and they are bound. That should not be the case. Before you sign, because the employer's rules of work form a part of the contract of employment, things like the staff handbook, certain policies, you want to request copies of such things, particularly the staff handbook, for your review before you sign. Why is this necessary? Because it gives you an idea of the culture. It gives you an idea of the culture of that place. It also gives you an opportunity to assess the extent of the employer's compliance, with extant labor law. Let me simplify it, right? You see, again, like I said, rules of work, such as employee handbooks, are binding on the employees, even whether or not you've read them, so long as they have been incorporated by reference. So you will see, it is typical to see in contracts of employment saying the fuller terms of your contract of employment are set out in the policies, including the staff handbook. But if you have not seen it and you have signed, you are bound, right? So, having said that, the next point you need to know is that certain employment terms by law, by Section 7 of the Labour Act, are meant to be in writing.
Okay.
They are meant to be in writing. They are not meant to be, we will,
verbal,
do you understand? We'll take it forward, as we go. They are meant to be stipulated in writing. Things such as the payment terms, the breakdown of your payments, and you need to know what is your basic pay, what goes into transportation, and what have you. So on that basis, you need to, know that. But again, specifically, you need to know that you need to check out things like your assigned tasks and responsibilities. You need to be able to ascertain that they fit into your career goals, and whether you have the wherewithal, the competence to discharge the functions that are required of you. Many times you find employees who take on opportunities that they are ill-suited for because they just want to earn a living. They get into the job, they start to struggle, they can't be confirmed because they don't meet expectation during the probation period. So you want to be sure that the assigned tasks, the role and the responsibilities fit into your career plans. You also want to look at things relating to training and career development opportunities. What is the culture of the firm or the organization as it pertains to training? Is it the kind of organization that will train you but that will have you sign punitive training bonds? You want to also look at things relating to hours of work, probation, confirmation, leave generally. For instance, employment terms that limit the rights of female employees to maternity leave once in 2 years may be argued to be discriminatory. You will see in some places where some employers, it's clearly stated in their handbook that you can't go for a maternity leave on more than one occasion in 2 years. That's wrong. So it's important for you to get the handbook together with copies of other rules of work for you to read. In summary, so that you are sure that you understand what the culture of that organization is, 1, and 2, for you to also ascertain whether they are compliant with extant labor law. But how do you know this? You seek, the benefit of legal advice. Don't just put pen to paper. You have a lawyer friend, of course, upon payment of a reasonable fee. How about you take a look at this for me and just advise me if I'm, not walking into a landmine and what have you. So generally speaking, you want to look before you leap. Yeah.
I mean, this looks like a school. Yeah. All right, guys, let's have a very short break and then we'll be back for more with Mayowa Arokodare.
You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available on podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
They are 1.8 billion globally. They would make 75% of workforce by 2025. They will outspace earnings of baby boomers in less than 10 years. Smartphones and tablets are the argument settlers and fact checkers for every conversation. Get more insight on African millennials on Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
Alright guys, welcome back. It's Tommy Wale on the African Millionaire Radio Show, and yes, I have a very, very interesting conversation on labor law with Mayowa Arokodare. Right guys, Mayowa, I'm just going to use the environment we are in, Lagos, right? And I know that some people, there was one woman that was telling someone one day and saying that if you don't wake up early in the morning and be in traffic and get to work, you're not hardworking. Some people have that very weird, warped, sense of hard work here. Now, there is stress in the air, right? It's a Friday and I don't know how stressed out some people. I'm sure some people didn't even want to go to work, this morning. So, on coping with stress and medical related issues, what should employees know about this, when relating with their employers?
Well, as a preliminary point, the Labour Act, Section 8, requires every employer of labour to conduct medical tests on every employee. Based on certain exigencies, certain employers will prefer to conduct that test prior to engagement. Okay. Obviously, for the purpose of saving costs. Okay. Because Section 8 says, look, for everybody in your employment, undertake a test at your expense. Okay. But if I have you do it before you join, then I don't have to pay for it, right? Yeah. So based on certain exigencies, some employers will have you do it prior to employment. But the most important point is that test is very important because it will enable both parties to confirm whether the employee, as a preliminary point, is medically fit to undertake the work and or cope with the stress involved in executing same. That's the first point. Now, the second point is that by Section 33 of the Employees Compensation Act 2010, now every employer is required to make a minimum monthly contribution of 1% of its monthly total payroll into the National Social Insurance Trust Fund. Now, the purpose of the NSITF is that in the event that the employee suffers injury in the course of his or her employment, the NSITF will pay compensation to the employee. But it's important to note that that compensation, that right to receive compensation under the Employees Compensation Act, is in lieu of any right that exists in tort or contract. Let me back up a bit, because that's a bit complex or a bit technical. The point is that your employer, on a monthly basis, is required to contribute 1% of his total monthly payroll to the NSITF, the National Social Insurance Trust Fund. Right? What is that money used for? That money is there so that if you suffer an injury in the course of your employment, you just draw on the funds from NSITF. The NSITF pays.
There's 1% of
that. Yes. No, not the entire 1%, but they draw. There's a scale relative to the
1% of monthly.
Yes, from all the employers in the country. So there's a pool of funds that employees can access once they suffer injury in the course of their employment. Right. So now that right to call on the NSITF to pay for you when you suffer injury is an alternative to you saying, hey, you know what? I don't want NSITF to pay. Because many a time the money is infinitesimal. The compensation is always very minute relative to the injury suffered. You may say, hey, I don't want your 750,000. I would rather take my chances and sue the employer for breach of contract or negligence. If your employer has made your work environment unsafe, because in law, the employer has a duty to make sure that the workplace is safe. There are obligations in law requiring first aid facilities, a couple of things. So where you feel that upon legal advice, you feel that the employer has dropped the ball, it may be prudent for you to say, I'm going to drop what NSITF will pay me because it's not a lot anyway. I'll take my chances in court and sue for breach of duty of care. Now, again, it's important to then say that as far as stress is concerned, employees need to be aware that the Labour Act actually mandates every employer to allow employees a minimum 1 hour rest period every day.
During work hours?
Yes. I mean, so for every employee that works a minimum of 6 hours, is entitled to 1 hour rest.
Now, that 1 hour rest, is it what, at the break time?
So the position of the law, what the law says in the Labour Act, it says for rest. Rest intervals. So you can use it for anything you want to. It need not be lunch. In fact, you can sit at your desk and refuse to do any work and say, I'm busy, I'm resting. It's your right. So that's one way of coping with, stress levels. But beyond that, now with the incidence of the COVID-19 pandemic now, many employers have resorted to working from home, flexi time. That's a welcome development because it keeps you off the road. Imagine during the 8-month period that the third mainland bridge was undertaking repairs, Eco Bridge was out of commission. It was serious. A lot of people were spending close to 6 hours coming from the island to Berger, and then they'll wake up in their houses in the morning, they wake up at 3 and they're back. You can't be productive when you get to work. So it's a welcome development for employers who are able to implement working from home or flexible hours, because then it takes the stress off you. You're able to maintain work-life balance, reduce stress, especially in a place like because where traffic actually contributes to the stress level against employees. So I hope I answered the question there.
That's really, really huge, and I think Mayowa, should we do this again? Because I think there's still more to talk about.
I mean, so I recall fairly saying to you when we spoke that there's a lot to unpack, and a 30-minute, 1 hour conversation.
Okay, so guys, we're gonna have Mayowa Arokodare right next week Wednesday on another episode, because I'm sure you all are glued, to your speakers and listening in on this and taking notes, right? So Mayowa will be back in the studio next week Wednesday to have a whole lot more interesting conversations on labor law. Thank you so much for coming this wonderful afternoon.
Happy to be here.
All right, guys, don't forget to go on africabusinessradio.com or Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and Spotify Podcast, and search the African Millennials to listen, on this conversation that just got aired. It's Tommy Wale again, and Mayowa, you have a Twitter account where you document and have conversations with
Yes,
this,
I have a dedicated
so that's
account.
Arokodare. That is Arokodare. Arokodare NG, right, on Twitter, and then follow the account, switch on the notifications, and then just get a whole lot more educated on labor law. All right, guys, don't forget to stay safe, don't drink too much, have a wonderful Friday afternoon. Bye for now.
You're listening to Africa Business Radio, where you get up-to-date insights on the Africa business landscape. Log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available on podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.
They are 1.8 billion globally. They would make 75% of workforce by 2025. They will outspace earnings of baby boomers in less than 10 years. Smartphones and tablets are the argument settlers and fact checkers for every conversation. Get more insight on African millennials on Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.